The Border Patrol Rio Grande Valley sector remains the busiest in the country, with more than 14,000 apprehensions last month.
Tonight, a look at how those apprehensions go down, the stories of the people detained, and how the Border Patrol is handling it all since the zero-tolerance policy went into effect.
It's part of our series, The Line. The night team's Tiffany Huertas is traveling along the border from Texas to California. She joins us live now from El Paso. Tiffany?
Tim Easey's about an hour into our ride-along. Agents apprehended a group of people crossing over illegally. While everyone has a different story, their ultimate goal is the same: for a better life and more opportunities.
Hey, if anybody's close, I got 5 on the ground here.
While on a ride-along with Border Patrol, things quickly escalate. Agents called for backup after spotting a group of people crossing into the United States illegally. As we arrive to the area, we see a man jump into the brush. As Border Patrol agent Marcelino Medina heads towards the back, the man walks out of the brush towards us. With a face of defeat, he surrenders. An agent arrives to help and takes him with the other people found nearby. This woman named Maria says violence in her hometown in Mexico makes it too dangerous to live there. She says people are thrown from bridges. Others are hung. For this 23-year-old man, he traveled more than 20 days from Guatemala. He says they endured difficult and exhausting conditions walking through the fields. He says smugglers are charging about $10,000 a person to cross into the United States. For him, it's worth it. He says the main reason he made this dangerous trek was to help his sick mother. Agents collect their personal belongings and place them in plastic bags. After taking down their personal information, they are transported to a processing facility.
There is no way to know exactly who's inside that group, and often at times we refer to that as potential threats in the mix. There will be individuals in there that are wanted for murder, MS-13 gang members, 18th Street gang members.
On the other side of the river, just across, is Mexico. Border Patrol agents say that this area, there's a lot of activity. You can see there's clothes, there's blankets, and there's even water bottles on the ground. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the number of apprehensions on the southwest border was more than 34,000 last month, down from 40,000 in May.
Increased infrastructure, and that includes increased personnel and technology. Once we have those components, we'll be able to better secure the nation.
In a statement, Homeland Security spokesperson Tyler Holton commended the zero-tolerance policy and said the government will continue to enforce the current immigration laws. Now, tonight we are reporting from El Paso. Right behind me is Ciudad Juarez. We are collecting different interviews along the border, and we hope that you continue to follow our journey. Tim Easey.
Some are calling it a humanitarian crisis in our own backyard. More than 700 people have lost their lives in Brooks County since 2004.
Brooks County is 2.5 hours south of San Antonio. Our Steve Spriester joins us live after a day, Steve, where you walked some of those same active routes immigrants and drug runners are taking.
Yeah, it was an eye-opening experience, Tim and East. We are actually live tonight at a place that a lot of these migrants are trying to avoid. They actually try and go around this border patrol checkpoint here in Falfurrias. We walked 3 ranches today in Brooks County in the heat of the day. And what we found is this is putting a lot of stress on people, including people who are trying to do nothing more than rescue.
Where I come from, when we see buzzards, we're used to seeing a dead hog or a dead deer. Here, it could be human beings.
He calls it the Beast, a trek that has taken lives.
I last about 3 hours, and 4 hours, you better have access to water because it'll get serious on you. You won't make it back out. I got stuck one time. In 4.5 hours, I was a wreck.
Renee is a ranch caretaker that has seen the toll the sand and sun can take, like walking through sand dunes.
And we have a humanitarian crisis here, so how are we going to address that?
Eddie Canales' work is evident along the trails. He fills these blue buckets with gallon jugs of water. All been used.
This is humanitarian aid. We're trying to save lives. We're not aiding and abetting. We're making the effort so people don't die.
Deputy Don White has found the bodies.
I'm scanning the ground for any remains. But I'm also scanning the edge of the tree lines for somebody that's stressed.
A former Bexar County deputy who now works search and recovery in Brooks. Armed with a rifle and knowledge, he talks about what the tracks and the trash tell him. But talk about the emotional side of what he does, and he has to walk away.
Does it ever get non-emotional?
More than policy and politics in Brooks County, it is remains and rescues. And this walk and the people we met showed us that. Heat, humidity, and a mix of humanity.
You're just always looking. And the whole idea is to keep yourself safe.
Every year, hundreds of people die while attempting to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. In California, some die attempting to go through the desert. The night team's Tiffany Huertas went to the Jacumba Mountains, where some undocumented immigrants are choosing to cross illegally, and shows us how volunteers are trying to save their lives.
It's a dangerous journey across the desert.
A veces encontramos carteras.
Thousands of people take every year.
It's really hot, as you can see. It's like over 100 degrees right now, like 108.
Behind these rocks is Mexico.
It gives them maybe that last bit of like strength or like power or will to like keep going.
We followed volunteers from the organization Border Angels as they placed water jugs in the Jacumba wilderness.
It's a very important way of helping out, regardless of like your background. Water never hurt anybody, so these people especially are in need of water after their long travels.
This is just one of the resting locations here in this very deserted area. But take a look, this is where the volunteers drop off some of the water, and you can see over here, there's some clothing that is left behind by possibly people crossing over illegally.
It's life or death reasons why they decided to do this.
These two sisters, Faith Kwan and Christine Kwan,
we were lucky enough to be born on this side of the border,
wanted to get a glimpse of conditions migrants face.
It was honestly really brutal out there.
They both describe this as a powerful experience.
We are having an existential crisis, and I don't mean just the humanitarian crisis we're having on the border at this moment, but an existential crisis as a country, and we're about to find out who we are and what we are.
Jesse Degollado joins me now. Jesse.
Well, in fact, you know, a lot of them that don't end up in the brush end up in the back of big rigs like this. And in fact, the Rio Grande Valley sector has already seen 800 big rig rescues already this year, surpassing last year's total. Even more reason for the Operation Big Rig campaign to help make the public and truckers aware of how they can help save lives.
Can anybody stand up?
The question by a San Antonio police officer seeing the misery inside a deadly big rig, now a rallying cry.
We need to stand up and we need to fight this.
Student truck drivers watched last May's report, stunned by what the officer's body cam video saw.
You're not used to seeing that much. It's death, that's what it is.
We would hate for anything to, like what you all saw in these videos to happen.
Yes. Operation Big Rig's PowerPoint presentation tries to warn future truck drivers of the risks. So when they start driving commercially, they'll do more than just check whether their rig is roadworthy.
To take advantage of truck drivers.
Agents at checkpoints have only minutes to look over tractor trailers. Not all of them go through X-ray machines. So if they're worried people were sealed inside before driving off, they're urged to let Border Patrol know. Also, if rigs are unlocked, unwanted passengers often climb in at truck stops or hide behind windjammers.
No human life, no human death is worth any money that they're going to offer you.
A former bus driver has two reasons for not doing it.
Mainly, well, to save the lives, and second of all, I don't want to be in trouble with the law.
It's bad. I mean, people do it, but I think money is the root of all evil, man. The money is the cause of all that.
Well, Steve, two more big rig rescues occurred just yesterday at checkpoints in Laredo and Eppernville. And as you know, San Antonio has seen 3 incidents in just the past year.
Yeah, Jesse, my question with all of this is why big rigs?
Well, interesting you should say that, because as I've said, and the Border Patrol has told me, that people are more profitable than drugs. And so they like to change their tactics. And using big rigs is the latest.
Yeah, we're talking about the cartels in a lot of instances.
That's right.
Crossing the border for a better education. Many students who live in Juarez, Mexico, take the risky and illegal trek every day to El Paso just to study.
The night team's Tiffany Huertas with the stories of some of those students tonight. She joins us live from the Santa Fe Street Bridge in El Paso. Tiffany?
Tim Easys, the students we spoke to are U.S. citizens, but their families are not. They cross the border every day, hoping for a better life. 17-year-old Jacqueline Ojeda's day starts early.
If I want to have like enough time, I wake up like at 5. And
she crosses from Ciudad Juarez through a port of entry to get to school. After a full day of learning,
and I go to work at 4:30. I just go straight, and then I just get off like at 12.
Then she does it all over again the next day.
Yeah, we're just trying to be better.
Ojeda says traveling can be dangerous, especially when she gets home late. She says girls are often kidnapped and found dead. Ojeda says criminals have different tactics, including creating distractions when you are driving.
They tell their kids to stand there, and then you stop, and they take you.
18-year-old Maria Fernanda Gonzalez also travels from Ciudad Juarez. Gonzalez says her friend was almost kidnapped after trying to help someone. She recently graduated from a high school in El Paso and is now enrolled in college. Gonzalez says her parents wanted her to have a better education and future. It may be dangerous and difficult, but for these students, it's worth it.
I've always told my mom that I'm going to have family here because I don't want my kids to be like between two cities.
I spoke to a spokesperson from the El Paso Independent School District who tells me if a student goes to their school, they must prove that they do have residency, something like a utility bill and some type of proof. But if they do live outside the county, they must pay. Tim Easys.
Tonight, a look at what life is like in Nogales, Arizona. The unique city is separated by a fence. On one side, the United States, on the other, Mexico.
It is Arizona's largest international border community, and it funnels billions of dollars worth of international trade into Arizona and the U.S. But the town also sees its share of unwanted activity.
The night team's Tiffany Huertas shares the stories of those living along the border fence in the latest part in our series, The Line.
As you notice, there is no buffer zone. We are back to back.
Santa Cruz County Sheriff Tony Estrada has seen it all.
The first drug tunnel was discovered here in Santa Cruz County in the city of Nogales.
Sheriff Estrada says during his 50-year career in law enforcement, he has seen more than 100 drug tunnels discovered.
As we speak, there may be one that's operational right now. There may be one that's being constructed. There's 32 sheriffs in 32 counties from San Diego to Brownsville. Each one of us has a different challenge.
Here in Nogales, Arizona, Mexico is just a few feet away. For some residents living on the U.S. side of the border fence, watching people crossing over illegally is nothing new. The border fence is Amira Robles' backyard.
Just people crossing over, and they try to run and hide, but that's like, for me, it's like a normal thing.
Sheriff Estrada says as people continue to cross over illegally, he doesn't believe a border wall will fix the problem. He believes
Number one, comprehensive, immigration reform. What they have now is broken.
And he says family separations are not the solution either.
And they did it only to scare people, discourage people, make it painful for people, make it traumatic for people. That's not the America that I'm used to seeing.
In 2006, the Tucson sector had more than 390,000 apprehensions. Last year, they had about 38,000. Tim, Myra.
We've covered a lot of ground so far on this trip to the border, the line, as we've been calling it the last couple of days. We still have some miles to go before we're done, but we want to go back to Del Rio now, where we spent a lot of our time yesterday, and talk about the mystery that is Lake Amistad. Its name is a Spanish word for friendship, but like a lot of things along the border, it seems to have a perception problem. Lake Amistad is huge. It spans across both the United States and the Mexico borders. But when it comes to businesses, Amistad is drying up.
Look at it. It's the most beautiful lake in Texas.
On a hot summer day, it seems like the perfect cruise. Water, wakes, and a whole lot of lake.
Gorgeous emerald green water. Nobody out here. Totally undeveloped. How much better does it get?
Mark Lewis is a fan of Amistad. He leases ranches across the border. On this day, we basically have the water to ourselves. Not great when you're making a living off the lake.
Why aren't people coming down here?
I don't know. I mean, we're close to San Antonio. We're close to Austin. All we need to do is just show up.
John Ducharme is an Amistad outfitter, a fishing and hunting guide who's afraid the lake's proximity to Mexico is the reason people shy away from Amistad.
People have that in their mind. It is incorrect, 100% incorrect. We have never had an incident on this lake. And I fish Mexico every day and have never had a problem.
We are literally right on the dividing line here. This buoy, as a matter of fact, marks the border. Behind you is the United States. Behind me is Mexico.
I have no clue why people don't come down here, except for the publicity that Mexico's gotten.
Publicity or misperceptions, we only saw 2 other boats in the 2 hours we were on the lake. One was the Border Patrol. Businesses or boats, Amistad seems to be a tough sell.
Some families living along the border live in fear, not of border violence, but fear of being found out that they are here illegally. Even after years in the U.S., they are haunted by the thought of deportation that could happen at any moment.
Tiffany Huertas shows us how some of these illegal immigrants are getting help and eventually peace of mind.
She was only 23 years old when she came to the United States, crossing the Rio Grande. For her safety, we are not using her name. Originally from Veracruz, Mexico, she came to the U.S. to work and to get away from the violence. Her son cries with concerns they might be separated one day.
Me preocupa de que me separen de mis hijas.
Heidi is also concerned her family might be separated. She came to the U.S. 5 years ago from Honduras, fleeing poverty and violence. Heidi turned herself in at one of the port of entries and was allowed to stay for a short period of time. But because she didn't have a permanent address at the time to receive the paperwork, she had to stay undocumented.
They're fearful. They have an instability in America.
Sister Phyllis Peters is the director for Proyecto Juan Diego, a nonprofit organization dedicated to education, engaging, and empowering underserved South Texas families.
At Proyecto Juan Diego in Brownsville, they're encountering about 48,000 people a year and serving about 13,000.
We put over 700 applications into immigration this past year alone. Take care. God bless.
Sister Peters says the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy has her worried.
Our values are changing. And it's not our values, but it is the American values which we've all grown up with, and we don't want to lose that.
Some people who cross the border illegally never make it alive. In California, the San Diego Medical Examiner's Office works closely with Border Patrol and the Mexican consulate to help identify bodies of those found along the U.S.-Mexico border.
The Night Team's Tiffany Huertas continues our special series, The Line.
These are the cases that offer our biggest challenge.
Julio Estrada has been examining bodies for more than 20 years.
They have not been identified. This person was discovered back in 1984.
He is the supervising medical examiner investigator in San Diego County. While all cases are different, Estrada says they treat everybody with the utmost respect, from local cases to those involving undocumented immigrants.
If we find somebody in a remote area or in a rural or city area in proximity to the body, then we can consider the possibility that this person came across. Once we encounter these remains, we check a number of times the number of layers of clothing that people remove, depending on the weather. indications of phone numbers in Spanish, contact information, and a lot of times documents, official documents from different countries.
Estrada says they work with Border Patrol.
When we have a person who might be an undocumented migrant, they come to our office, regardless where they are in the county, and they help us with fingerprints.
And they also work with the Mexican consulate. With technology developing every day, it is helping the San Diego Medical Examiner's Department identify bodies faster.
We are able to obtain better images that we can focus on them and see things that we probably didn't see at the scene. We have new cameras, infrared cameras, that they can bring up tattoos that normally we will not see on people who are starting to decompose. We have GPS technology.
Estrada hopes to identify more bodies to give families the closure they need.
A park located along the U.S.-Mexico border is serving as the middle ground for families stuck on each side of the border. Many traveling long distance to visit the San Diego park for a chance to look through the fencing and see their families in Mexico. The night team's Tiffany Huertas takes us to those face-to-face meetings at Friendship Park in tonight's final report on our special series, The Line.
It's the connecting point for families who are separated. This is the end of the line. The border fence goes into the ocean. We're in San Diego, California, and right next to us is Tijuana, Mexico. The community's so close together, but divided by this fence. 11-year-old Jocelyn Loaiza came with her family to visit relatives on the border.
Honestly, they're treating people unfairly and unequally.
On Saturdays and Sundays, this federal patrol zone called Friendship Park is open for 4 hours with 2 layers of fencing. It has been 6 years since Victor Campos has seen his family. Emotions ran high.
I came to visit my dad, and it was sad.
For Yuri Padilla, her father drove 33 hours from Veracruz, Mexico, just to see her. Padilla says it's frustrating and sad not being able to hug each other. They only get to see each other from a distance. She says it's not the same. For these families, even if it's just for a few hours, it's worth traveling all the way here. For the younger generation, they are learning about the true meaning of living across the border early on.
It's sad just seeing them there stuck without freedom.
Reporting along the U.S.-Mexico border, Tiffany Huertas, KSAT 12 News.